Welcome back, my friends, to the InObscuria podcast, a podcast where we exhume obscure rock and punk and metal, and we put them in one of three categories: the lost, the forgotten, or the should-have-beens. And I am all three of those. My name is Kevin Williams, and I am joined by Mr. Robert Harrison.
How you doing?
Whatever that was, I'm doing great.
I don't know.
Whoever you are today,
wearing
a swear shirt again. All right, man, rocking it out.
Sure. Well, this was, well, I don't want to, okay. So I wore this to do some pressure washing in today. Because
that's the one that you can lose. I see.
No, it's not was that. It was just, it was kind of lightweight. It's a lightweight material. And so I need something that would dry quickly.
Meaning it's so old that it's falling apart.
Yeah, but that's how I chose it. I knew that it would dry quickly. But last week's episode, how's this for a segue? Last week's episode was all about the funk. Mm-hmm. And so that inspired me to get out there and get the funk off the band van.
I see what you did there.
See?
I see what you did there. Nice.
Professional. But it's been sitting in the weeds across the street for most of the winter. And I was like, it's time. And I pulled it over here, pressure washed it. It was bad. But it revealed 4 different colors that van has been since I bought it. Not really its entire life, but just since I've bought it, that thing has been 4 different colors. And it now, because some of the paint came off as I was pressure washing it, because that's what you're not really supposed to do is pressure wash your car with like high pressure.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it's been 4 different colors, but I've got some bad news.
Uh-oh.
We have ants.
Ants in the van?
Ants in the van. I opened the door, and holy crap, I am not kidding. It was like a horror movie. And everything was moving. And so I went and got some spray and sprayed it and had to pressure wash kind of the inside and spray it with bug spray. But I'm thinking maybe tomorrow I'm going to go get a bug bomb and set off a bug bomb.
Just blow it up. Moose the van.
I mean, I guess you could do that. It's not going to hurt it, but I got to
How could you possibly hurt moose?
You can't really. I just pressure wash the inside of it. I mean, it's that durable. But yeah, I think I'm going to just go all the way and just bomb the shit out of these ants because that really ticked me off. They were freeloading. They weren't paying rent and sneaking in there. So yeah, it's very clean now, and I think I got most of the ants out, but I'm going to go back in the morning, and if I see any movement, we're going to go all the way and bring in the really heavy ordnance to blow them up. I'll disconnect the battery first just to make sure it doesn't actually blow up. But
in one of these episodes, we have to give the full background of moose.
It's got more history and more stories than most people I know.
But before we do that, go listen to Metal Up Your Podcast, The Dummy Room, Pod of Thunder, Decibel Geek, Podcast Rock City, Cobras and Fire, Growing Up Rock, History Science Theater, Rock Strikes 10, I Love It Loudcast, Ages of Rock, and Monty's Rockcast. Also, check us out on InObscuria.com. Like us, share us, recommend us, do what you will with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right, well, you know, we had a very funky episode last week, so I was really concerned that, you know, do I do a volume 3 already? I don't know. I felt good to do that episode, so I was concerned of where do we go from here, and I don't know what happened, but I had a dream last night, and I was visited by the dead spirit of Fred Durst.
A poltergeist.
Yep, it was Fred Durst, and he was screaming.
Is he dead?
He might as well be.
Yeah, I think
he was screaming at me, and he was saying, "It's the end of the world." And then he said, "Watch out for Y2K."
He's a little behind.
And I thought, well, Fred never was the smartest of characters. No. And I can't remember when he died, but probably around then.
He said, "I'm feeling those lighters."
So that got me thinking, you know, obviously that it might be time to do our very own Y2K episode. And this is called 2000s Rock and Punk and Metal Time Capsule? I say it with a question mark.
A question mark? Upward inflection?
Exactly, because I don't know about everyone listening, but all I heard coming out of the 90s was, music now sucks. There is no rock music left. It's like as soon as the 90s, everybody that was our age, and it happens to every generation, right? You're so into the music when you're a young person, and then you hit a threshold at some point, and everything sucks after that. And so I just remember all of our friends going, "There's nothing new that's good. Everything sucks now. There's rock music is dead." And we're talking about 2000. But I remember this very clearly. Everything on the radio is crap. So I'd like to debunk that today because there were actually a lot of good bands in the 2000s. Some of them even got some good press, but there was a lot of junk too.
Lots
A whole
of
lot
junk.
of bad stuff.
Lots of junk.
Whole lot of shit. So let's just give a little history of coming out of the 90s. Do you remember the Y2K scare?
Yes.
Do you have a story? You must.
The only thing I remember is we left town and we went up to the mountains and we thought, you know what, the world comes in and I don't want to be in the middle of a major city with riots and crap like that. So we went camping. I don't think you were with us, but we went up to the mountains. The usual cohorts at that time went up to the mountains and camped out that weekend. And then, of course, nothing happened.
And awaited Armageddon.
We came home very tired and hungover.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what I did, but I do remember leading up to the year 1999, leading up to Y2K, everybody was concerned that they hadn't done the computers right, I guess.
There was a glitch in the programming.
There was a glitch and that everything was just going to shut down and the world was going to go to hell. And people were basically putting together bomb shelters, if you will, just of storing food and water. And
even The Simpsons did an episode on it. That's how important it was.
It was like the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again.
It was of our lifetime.
Right.
It was the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah. And then, it came and went and everybody was okay.
Nothing happened.
Yep. Here we are 20 years later. We're still okay, maybe.
Yeah, just a little
we have different stuff going on now.
Other wars and crises.
Here's the other thing that I remember about the 2000s is something very prominent in music started to take over, and that was auto-tune. Robot voices really took over, especially in pop music, and really has never gone away.
Nope.
So everybody coming out of the 90s started recording digitally, obviously. Everybody was doing everything in Pro Tools and what other software there is. It's like Pro Tools, and everybody was auto-tuning the hell out of everything. Mm-hmm. Trying to achieve, I think at first they were trying to achieve perfection, and then they just realized it made a cool robot sound, so let's just go with it. So the robot voices began in the 2000s, really. And then I think the other biggest thing that came out of the 2000s from a music perspective are all the internet music services. That's when iTunes really came to be, and the iPod became this major device that everybody now had to play music on. MP3s had come out before, but it took Apple to really make it a revolutionary thing that it was. And at that time, everything shifted from buying albums and CDs to really buying singles on iTunes. Mm-hmm. Whereas now we're into streaming and nobody buys anything. Mm-hmm. But, iTunes really set the stage for where we are today. There was also Napster. There's a whole lot going on with Napster at that time with free sharing of music and Lars Ulrich and Metallica battling Napster to shut them down and all the BitTorrents. I remember there were just tons of torrent sites where people would share music and basically steal everything and get it for free.
You never did that, right?
Of course not. Why? I'm a stand-up citizen.
I never got CDs burned by you from places that. Never.
What would make you say that? That was the doppelganger. Also in the 2000s, there was this thing called American Idol that came to prominence, which actually changed music quite a bit.
It did.
It's crazy that it did, but it did. It actually changed who was popular. I mean, artists came out of that show that are still around today, but it also just changed, I think, the kids that were watching it. It changed their perception of what music was and what pop music was and how to become a star. And, gone are the years of slugging it out. No, you just go on a TV show and you become a star.
Instant fame.
And even the ones that didn't get famous, there were even ones that got famous for being horrible and still sold albums for being horrible. It's a crazy thing. That was a British show that they had brought over to the States. And of course, we just take it to a whole new level, don't we? As we do with everything. The other thing is MySpace. Before Facebook in the 2000s, MySpace was huge. So social media really came to prominence in the 2000s. There was MySpace. It was great for bands and music, really, because there was a lot of sharing and a lot of easy publicity, if you will. And also Pure Volume, which was another one that was used by a lot of indie artists at the time to push their music. All of a sudden, you didn't really need the record company, and good thing, because they were all tanking at the time, and they've never really come back. And that really goes back to your Napster and your iTunes and the way that music is consumed. And then also YouTube actually started in the 2000s. Now, it wasn't the beast that it is today, but
No, it was just little homemade videos.
it was mostly a way for people to share videos, and then it became what it is now. So let's talk about the music. There is no rock music in the 2000s. Rock's dead. Everything sucks now.
Except for us. We were there.
Well, that's the main thing we're going to talk about. We're going to play actually 10 songs that we wrote. No. No, so let's just kind of break it down, because if you think about the decades that we do, usually we talk about genres or classifications of bands, and we'll do the same thing here. So coming out of the 90s, obviously you had post-grunge. Now, what is considered post-grunge? Your Foo Fighters, Creed, Nickelback, that was all considered almost like grunge light. It's kind of the post-grunge thing. So it was all the bands that were influenced by the grunge bands, but weren't really grunge. They were just kind of use that same guitar out front to cover up pop music. Mm-hmm. Your alt rock, all of your alternative rock, which was huge in the 90s, kind of continued. It morphed a little bit. It went a little more new wavy. I think it was kind of a retro throwback. You had the Killers, you had Franz Ferdinand. All of it sounded a little 80s to me, but it was still kind of new at the same time. And going into the 2000s, pop punk was huge. So you had your Blink 182, you had Green Day, Sum 41, all releasing huge albums that were still selling, at least in the first half of that decade. And you still had your new metal, which began in the late 90s and really just came to prominence in the early 2000s and really just got bloated and overdone and horrible. But your Korn, your Limp Bizkit, Deftones, Slipknot. Now, I own albums by all of those guys I just named, but I can tell you it hasn't aged well. When I go back and listen to it now, it's...
Oh, yeah? Oops.
No, to my ears, at least.
Right.
It's just, I don't know. Maybe it's going to take another 10 years before it sounds retro again. I don't know. But anyway, so what was born? What was kind of new? There was early on, there was garage music, which there have been garage bands since the beginning of rock and roll, but it kind of became its own thing that was actually somewhat successful in the early 2000s. You had the Hives, White Stripes,
Hives,
the Strokes,
Vines.
the Vines, all the bands. Everything had a "the" at the beginning for the most part. And I remember Sum 41 had a clever video where they were the Sums.
The Sums.
I used to think that was really funny, playing up on it. And then you had something called emo, which you had your Dashboard Confessional, Taking Back Sunday, Thursday, Jimmy Eat World, My Chemical Romance, which I actually love emo. At some point, we'll probably do something on emo, because to me, it was a classification at the time. I feel like that was sort of the end, or the tail end, of people trying to put everything into a box, and they threw everything into the emo box. Emo was just punk music that had a little bit more pop sensibility, or just a little more to do with the 90s than it did with the 70s or 80s punk, to me. But tell me I'm wrong. That's fine. There was also metalcore. So you had bands like Killswitch Engage, Hatebreed, Bullet for My Valentine, really just kind of punk hardcore influenced metal is what it was. A lot of screaming. And there was even something called screamo, but really that was just metalcore and emo mixed together.
Bastard child.
And then at the end of the decade, you had indie rock start to come to prominence, which would take over the next decade.
Thank God.
Now, in Britain, the UK, there was a little bit different. There was Britpop. There was a post-punk revival. So, your Radioheads and bands like that were doing some different things. And Britpop, you had like Coldplay and kind of your fake U2s, kind of coming around at that time. So also, we've talked about it. Japan and Sweden were booming. We've done episodes on both of those countries, and a lot of the music that we played were coming out of this time. That stuff that just didn't have any regard in the U.S., but elsewhere it was big. In Europe, power metal was still huge and got a whole lot bigger in the 2000s. Bands like Hammerfall and Nightwish and Symphony X, they were all that Ronnie James Dio style metal, operatic vocals, and huge festivals in Europe. Just never touched ground in the States, but it was going on big time in Europe. And then there was kind of a retro metal. So by the time the 2000s came along, all of a sudden people started listening to things that they had totally given up in the 90s, which was glam metal and just retro heavy metal. Mm-hmm. People kind of started listening to that again. It was kind of cool to be in a bar and to hear Motley Crue again.
There had been a waiting period where you could unironically say, oh yeah, I like that.
And all of a sudden, a lot of those bands started coming back and doing reunion shows and going on these massive shed tours where there'd be like 4 hair metal bands, and they were filling up the sheds. Mm-hmm. We even got to play one of them.
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun, and I was so happy to see that come back. Actually, all those bands got greatest hits albums released during this time, I believe. And I think another thing that helped with that was when the Darkness in 2002, the Darkness came around and kind of helped bring some of that.
I think that sped it up. You're absolutely right. Now that I think of it, that had to have sped up that romanticizing of the good old days.
It was kitschy, it was fun, and people thought it was funny, and you would see all these posts, but at the same time, people really enjoyed it. It was fun to listen to.
He had some talent. That guy could sing.
And they were very talented.
Yeah.
We're going to dive into some of the acts that you may remember when we go through this, but for the most part, a lot of these bands have just been lost. They've kind of been, they're either lost on people or they're forgotten. They had a hit and people just forgot about them, and you don't hear them anywhere now. A lot of the bands in the 2000s were relying on placements, which is still the same thing. That kind of set the stage for music going forward. So if you got placed on a TV show or in the movies or on a video game, that's where a lot of your, or a commercial, that's where a lot of your income was coming from, because the royalties were getting smaller and smaller with these new services. And that's exactly the way it is today. This is what started that whole trend. But a lot of these bands that we're going to talk about today had placements in TV shows and in video games, especially in the 2000s. So let's jump into it. The first band I'm going to talk about is a band from Atlanta, and they formed in the mid-90s. And when I came to Atlanta, I heard their name all the time. And I just remember their shows being sellouts, and everybody talked about this band, and the band is called Injected. And they put out an album in 2002. They got signed to Island Records and put out an album produced by Butch Walker.
I just listened to them probably 3 days ago on your iPod. So this on an iPod, nice. I listened to them just 3 days ago.
Yeah, so I loaned Robert my old 40 gig iPod
with duct tape holding it together. Actual duct tape.
Still works. I can't believe it.
Works great. And the best music is on this iPod. It's amazing music.
Injected actually had a top 20 single. They had heavy MTV rotation. They had film and video game placements. The films were fantastic. They had Fast and Furious, the first one. I mean, that's a franchise that's still going today.
Yeah, that's huge.
Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man soundtrack. The song I'm going to play was featured on The Scorpion King, which, not a great movie, but it launched the movie career of The Rock. And I can't remember the female actor's name, but just go look it up. My God, she was hot. Oh. Yeah, she was hot.
How you doing?
Yeah, super hot. I can't remember her name, though.
Wait, I'll Google it.
They toured with another Atlanta band who was coming to prominence at the same time, or maybe a few years before, Seven Dust. So another great Atlanta band. They toured with Incubus, Papa Roach, there's your new metal, Nickelback, and Jerry Cantrell, among others. They were really making something of their career. And from what I understand, Island just didn't support them that well. And Jade Lemons, who was one of the guitarists, I think the primary guitarist really, he decided to leave the band after their first big U.S. tour. So they played with all these bands, and he decides to leave, and I'm not really sure why. And they continued on as a trio for a little bit, but really couldn't make a go of it. And I think they even started writing material for a second album, but without Jade, they just couldn't make it work. And they tried to get together over the years several times and never could. Jade went on to play with some other bands, and then he actually ended up passing away in 2016. And I remember Jeremy sent me a text, because Jeremy was buddies with Jade, and he was really bummed out, and he said, "Did you hear Jade passed away?" I'm like, wow. I mean, he was a young dude.
Yeah, our age.
Anyway, they actually did release a second album in 2017, so it was a posthumous release for Injected, but really only had one truly great one and done one album. The album's called Burn It Black, and the name of the song that I'm going to play is the title track, Burn It Black.
I sold these streets with my own blood. It seems my soul is feeling uncomfortable. I'm just like you, I'm complicated too. Jealous now, sitting my back to spare. Well, burn it like a sin. Falling off the wagon again. Burn it like a sin. Lost my head. God, wish I left and now you're done. It's in the back. chase this lust that we found. Oh, just like you, my spirit's broken too. Burn my bridges into the ground. Well, I burn it like it's sin, falling out the way again. Burn it like it's sin, lost my head. You got one shot left and now you're done. You turn your back on everyone. Burn it like it's sin, time to.
I'd be okay if you played that over. I mean, just starting to get back into it. Memories were starting to come back. I remember you had either made a copy of a CD or burned a CD with that song, or I had the album on CD. I can't remember which, but I remember playing that CD in the band van after we were no longer a band. This was right after that, but listening to it in the band van on the way to work when I used to go to work, driving the band van to work back in the old days. But yeah, it just all those memories come back. The guitar tone, that's one of the things I was thinking.
Huge. God, it's so big.
Heavy and big, but it's distinct and it's melodic at the same time. And it's what's missing from most new rock in the past 10 years. All the heavy stuff that comes out that it's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of good, but all the guitar sounds the same. All the guitars sound the same.
This was, I don't know for a fact, but I can only imagine these were not processed sounding guitars coming out of digital amps. Mm-hmm. These are the real deal Marshalls turned up to 11.
Yes.
To me, they captured kind of what a lot of their contemporaries were doing with the whole post-grunge thing, that big guitar sound. They had pop sensibilities and hooks, but they seemed genuine.
Yep.
Like they were what hard rock was at that time. This is a hard rock band in the year 2002.
And that's what I pictured as hard rock. It's not metal to me.
This isn't metal. This is rock.
It doesn't have that
big
guttural scream, that temper tantrum scream that came into play, and that every single band had to put that in their song. At some point in that song, it had to have, and I'm not going to imitate because I can't, but that temper tantrum guttural scream somewhere in the song or multiple points, and it was so cliche. I got so sick of it. Really, I didn't care if I liked the rest of the song. If they did that scream in the middle of the song, I'd turn it off.
Yeah, because everybody was doing it.
Everybody was doing it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And these guys, to me, were taking what was current and adding in that 70s style rock sensibility to it. So it's just a good rock song, and it's a little heavied up. Mm-hmm. You know, they took the 80s and the 70s and just kind of heavied up the current sound.
And Butch Walker took it and put a stamp on it, right on it.
And that's partly why it sounds the way it does, is because Butch touched it.
Man.
He knows what to do with guitars, and he also knows what to do with harmonies and hooks. Anyway, as you can tell, we are supporting our local bands. But it was just so good and so refreshing, to be honest. And it was just before, had they come out maybe 5 years later, the singing may have been different. Because if you remember, as emo kind of started to take over, it actually changed a lot of vocalists going for that higher register, that kind of whinier sound. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of bands that's cool. They did it well, but for some reason that took over everything rock for a little bit.
Yeah.
I digress. Let's talk about the next rock band, because there's no rock in the year 2000 or in the decade of the 2000s. Wrong. There was a band from LA that formed in 2004 that played 70s style hard rock with a little bit of stoner metal and a little bit of skate rock to boot, and their name was Year Long Disaster. You ever heard of Year Long Disaster?
Yes, 2020. We're living it.
Good one. So Year Long Disaster from LA. Like I said, they were kind of a skate rock band, kind of a hard rock. They were just good is what they were. And in 2007, they released their first album. They signed to Volcom Entertainment. And Volcom is a skate and surf company. And in the 2000s, they were, at one point, they even signed TSOL, who we've talked about before. They released an album on Volcom. They were signing a lot of really cool bands. I'm actually not sure if they still have this going on or not. I don't know if they just are focusing on the skate and surf stuff now. But anyway, they had this whole entertainment division, and they had some really good bands, and they were putting some funding into it. And I don't know if you remember, but when I was trying to promote Big Jack Pneumatic to some of the management companies that we were pitching to at the time, which was right around this same time. Well, I guess it was a little earlier. It was like 2002, 2003. Mm-hmm. I was pitching the idea of there were all these X game type events, all of these skate, and we weren't at the beach, but there were surf events. There were, in the winter, there were winter X type events not far from where we are that we could get to. And I was really trying to pitch the managers that we were talking to of how do you get us on that circuit? And that's exactly what these guys did. So they were playing all these really cool events where all the cool kids were, that were doing skateboarding and all that sort of stuff. And their music goes along really well with it. And it's got a little bit of retro sound to it. I mean, the bands they toured with, your mind's gonna be blown. So they toured with Motorhead. I mean, come on.
Oh, come on.
They toured with Turbo Negro, who is an amazing band that we'll talk about some other time.
All right.
They toured with the Misfits.
Nice.
They toured with another band that was on Volcom as well called Valiant Thor, which they're pretty awesome. They toured with an Australian band that is sort of AC/DC-like called Airborne. I don't know if you've ever heard them, but they're great. And they toured with Clutch. So bands that are just touring machines. This band actually went out on the road with them, which is pretty cool. They only released 2 albums. The second one came out in 2010, and then they've never announced that they've broken up. They just went dark. Like you just don't hear anything from them. Their first album is so good. It's just called Year Long Disaster, 2007. And I'm going to play one of the singles from it, which is Leda, Atomica.
Tell me all your secrets.
another great example of really, really hard rock without crossing over into metal. And that's what I always wanted to do when I got on stage, was to rock out as hard as I could, just put on a great show, but not try to come off as a metal band. We weren't, nothing wrong with that. I love metal bands. I just knew that we weren't, but I wanted to just push the limit of what we did as far as hard rock as far as we could.
Yeah, as much as I love metal, I have never actually been in a metal band ever.
Right. Because it's just something that I look up to. It's kind of on a shelf a little bit higher than I can reach in my mind. I keep it up there to, respect, and I don't want to cross over into that. Because if I do, I want to do it really well, but that's just not me. That's not what's in my gut and my heart.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's what
music
comes out of you. It's also like a look. Like you can look at a certain guy and go, that guy's metal.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever looked at us and went, they're metal.
Not at all. We were ourselves. I mean, thank God we didn't try to pretend to be something else. We were ourselves, but still that feeling of just rocking it out, and really, once again, really good guitar tones in there that's just unique. It's a little different. It sets them apart from the band that comes on right after them, as they sound slightly different.
And that was a single, and the song structure is so different from anything else to me that was really going on then. I heard that, and I just immediately... It was 2007, but it immediately took me back to like an early 80s vibe from, I don't know, just some of those LA bands that were just doing things a little bit differently before it got all kind of samey with the metal, with the glam metal.
Yeah.
Because it did get a bit samey and it get a bit formula enforced, but that was not that at all. We'll move on from Year-Long Disaster to another band, and another thing that was happening in the 2000s that was really big was the Vans Warped Tour. A ton of bands would exist on the Vans Warped Tour. That it was just a place where you could go, and in Atlanta it was always in August, so you could just sweat
God,
to
it
death.
was hot in a
Asphalt
parking lot.
Why would they do Atlanta in
an
August?
asphalt parking lot?
Yeah. But
it was brutal.
The bands were amazing because they really, when it first started, it was really a punk rock thing. And then they just branched out over the years and really had just a smorgasbord of rock bands of the time. And the Swear even got to play a couple of them.
Oh, I remember that you played on a van.
We actually played on a truck, It was like a truck that had folded it down, and it was a stage.
Yeah.
It was a Sheer Girl stage is what it was called, I believe.
What was it?
Sheer Girl.
Sheer Girl?
Sheer Girl was a band that used to follow the Warped Tour, and they would set up outside.
Oh, that's right. I remember
and
the
play,
story now.
and then
They
the
got
promoters
invited.
were like, just come in and do it. just come in. And
They're going to stalk us. Come on in.
and they set it up one year right next to one of the main stages, and it was amazing because basically the main stage act would go off, and then we would start up, and all the people had to do is just turn their heads. It's like, oh, it's so great.
Is that the one we went backstage and got to eat in the cafeteria or something?
Yes.
That's what of course, that's my memory.
That's what we remember.
Is being able to eat in the cafeteria, not meeting...
the catered food.
Yeah, it's not meeting rich and famous. I got to eat really good food. That's what stands out.
I got to be all stinky and sweaty and eat good catered food.
And it was air conditioned. Let's not
And
forget
it was
that.
air conditioning. Yeah. Anyway, I used to discover just tons of bands that I would otherwise probably not have heard of. And in 2003, when we went to it, there was a band from Long Beach, California called Maxeen. And I'd never heard of this band. I think they had only recently signed with a punk label called Side One Dummy, which a lot of punk bands at that time were on that label. They had just released their first album, and they played the Warped Tour. And from the first or second song, I went, "Oh, these guys are different." Because to me, to my ears, I was hearing the Police and the Jam. I mean, it was like I was getting new wave music, like true new wave, that really late 70s, early 80s new wave before it got bloated and crazy. But it was coming from a current band called Maxeen. And this band only put out 2 albums and an EP, and they disbanded in 2008. They toured mostly with other punk and emo bands, but I just really never felt that they fit into that. And they even got signed for their second album. They got signed to Warner Music and could have really done something with that because Warner was still a prominent label and had backing behind them, but it just didn't really go anywhere. I think they had some video game placements, and they did the Warped Tour thing, and that was kind of it. But I felt like this band had so much more potential. So this is a bit of a lost classic band to me that should have been more than they were. See what you think. Maxeen, Delete Lola from their original self-titled album, Maxeen, in 2003.
couldn't quite place what genre it was. Like you said, it's a little of this, a little of that. They didn't have the in front of their name at the time, which might have helped because it's kind of simple.
The Maxeens.
The Maxeens, yes. The Hive Stripe, whatever. So all of those bands that were kind of the garage band, but that was a little more emo than the Strokes and the Hives and the Vines were. So
I still just hear like a whole Police late 70s, early 80s vibe to that.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't know. I just feel like that should have gotten more attention than it did. It's just me.
I prefer that over all the other crap, the angry rap metal that was around.
All right. So speaking of angry rap metal, let's go. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm out.
All right. So next we're going to talk about a metal band from Kendall, Florida. Do you know Kendall, Florida?
I should.
So I looked it up because I wasn't sure.
Florida.
Well, I wasn't sure where that was. It's actually part of Miami-Dade.
Oh, that's why I don't know.
That's why you don't know.
That was a different country.
It is a different country.
Southern New Jersey.
So this is a band that formed in 2004. And they were originally called Radio. Glad they changed their name. Mm-hmm. And they were signed to Atlantic Records in 2005. Now, the interesting thing about that is this is before they changed their name. They were signed as Radio, and all of the members were either teens or preteens. And this
parents have to sign for
and
them.
This is a metal band. So for whatever reason that doesn't work out, they then get signed to Interscope in 2007. So a few years later, none of them are at the age of 20 yet. And they released their first album in 2007. They changed their name to Black Tide. And the album that came out is called Light From Above. And it is a metal juggernaut of an album. And these guys were all teenagers. And it's amazing. I would say it sounds the most like early Maiden, new wave of British heavy metal, with a twist of being current in 2008. And there were some other bands kind of doing that, like Avenged Sevenfold, but these guys do it better. And they actually toured with Avenged Sevenfold. They toured with Bullet for My Valentine and Trivium. Those are other bands that were kind of in that same genre, but again, not doing it as true to Nawabum as these guys were. And these are kids from Miami. It just is crazy.
You don't think of heavy metal in Miami.
No, and these guys are Latino guys.
Yeah.
So you especially don't think of it with, a Latino audience in Miami.
Because you don't want to be walking around in leather jackets and leather pants in Miami.
That's how they looked. They looked
9 million degrees there.
They looked like dudes from they look like a thrash band from the 80s in their pictures with leather jackets on and high-top sneakers.
Oh, that's been sweaty and funky.
They also toured with Iron Maiden.
Oh, God.
So they actually got picked up and toured with Iron Maiden,
which
is amazing. Now, they would go on to release 2 more albums and an EP before kind of calling it quits. But to me, they never captured the sound, that original sound that was so true to me to Nawabum-style music. Mm-hmm. They sort of started branching off into what the other bands they were touring with were doing, which is more of a 2000, late 2000s sound of new wave of American heavy metal, which was, a little screamier, a little, I don't know, what's the word for it?
Crap.
No, it wasn't crap. I mean, it's good stuff, but it just followed more of a script.
Oh,
than
formulaic.
It was more formulaic. Exactly, because all the bands were doing.
That's probably my biggest beef about it, other than the scream. Once again, and that's formulaic. That it had a template, and you had to follow that template. So I want to hear some of their music before they drifted off into the abyss. Yeah,
some great musicianship. I mean, and in their later albums, you can even hear just the sounds of the drums, the sounds of the guitars. They all kind of changed to what everybody else was doing. And to me, it took all of the nuance of what made them when they first came out. But, as people age, they change. And I guess these guys were their parents must have listened to like Maiden and Metallica. And they even covered a Metallica song on their first album. So it's pretty amazing. But this is Black Tide. Light From Above is the album. And the song I'm going to play is Black Abyss.
Nothing left for me to say. The thought of it is killing me. I guess it's time for my demise. There's no more time, I'm left aside.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to be able to shred like that at 18 years old.
Right?
Good God, that would have been fun. I'll just imagine that it would have been fun. But then the guy's voice too, great vocals, great guitar work. I can totally see what you're talking about. That's got a little bit more of that early Maidenish stuff to it, and it just sucks that they, for whatever reason, devolved into what everybody else was doing. And it probably was lots of pressure from record companies. Oh, you should do this one little thing, and then another little thing, and then the producers. Oh, you should do this one little thing, and it just
and as you get older, maybe you're touring with all these other bands, and you want to. Yeah, you're influenced by them. Yeah. And they're older than you. All the bands they were touring with.
So they must be right if they're older.
So they probably got influenced. But for whatever reason, they did change. But to me, it was the retro style that they had, which they had no clue other than just listening to albums because they weren't alive, when it came out. But the retro style that they had is actually what set them apart.
Yep.
And it's interesting because not long after that album came out, there was actually a whole new genre born where there are bands even to this day that are trying to capture that new wave of British heavy metal sound. It wasn't a thing when these guys were doing it, but a couple of years later, there were tons of bands, and a lot of them for Canada for some reason, but there are a lot of Canadian bands that were doing this whole retro. There's a whole retro thrash scene going on now, and there's a retro Nuwabum scene going on now from new young bands. And we'll dive into some of that because it's really cool.
New Wabum.
New Wabum. But they're not from Bum. They're from somewhere else.
New Wacom. Canadian metal.
Yeah, I love that band. I love that album. I don't mind their other material, but it lost that something special that they had, to me. My opinion. Okay, so we've talked about garage rock. We can't do a 2000s episode without playing some of it. And I'm going to play one that was a pretty big single. I mean, this is really stretching it to play it on this show, but we're going to play it anyway because I think it's such a great song, and it's from a band that I never heard anything else from. And the band I'm talking about is the Bondies. You ever heard of the Bondies?
Ew. I swear I have.
When we play the song, I bet you go, oh yeah.
They're one of those.
Oh, yeah.
There's lots of those.
They are another garage band from Detroit. There were a bunch of them. That's where the White Stripes came from. There was a band called the Detroit Cobras, a band called The Go. There were tons of them. And the Bondies were also from Detroit. They played with all of those bands. And their first album came out in 2001, which is right at the time that all those bands were hitting. And it was produced by Jack White. So, of course, that probably helped out a little bit because they would soon explode with the White Stripes. Now, something that's interesting, before their second album came out, they got signed to a major. They got signed to Sire after the first album. And before that album came out, the guitarist Jason Stolzheimer and Jack White got into a major scuffle at some party. And
actual scuffle, not just an argument, but
fisticuffs.
Fists were flying.
Yeah. And Jack White was actually charged with aggravated assault. I mean, he hurt the dude.
I have not heard this story before.
So he hurt the singer, guitarist from the Bondies pretty badly, and they had been friends because he produced their first album.
Nothing like a few beers between friends.
Yeah, so I can only imagine that something was going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jack White, I think he gets taken away, hauled off to the pokey. And he
wrote a song about it, I'm sure.
I'm sure he did. He was sentenced to anger management.
How come that's not a reality show?
I don't know.
Jack White and anger, because he had a feud with the Black Keys guy, in Nashville. They're both of them. Their children went to the same preschool or something like that.
That's where you get in fights.
And he claims the Black Keys ripped off all his songs, and so there was just the bad blood between them.
They were another duo band.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
So I can see him prone to needing some anger management.
They both bastardized the blues. So
yeah. Yep. Fired their bass players. We don't need you.
The other cool thing about this band, I guess that was a cool thing. I don't know. I thought it was an interesting story. I had never heard that. I would have thought that would have made news.
You got to fight with Jack White. That's a cool thing. Come on. How many people can say that?
So they were also, the song I'm going to play is actually the theme song from the Dennis Leary show Rescue Me. So even if you didn't hear it maybe on the radio or somewhere else, you may have caught it on television. The name of the song is Come On, Come On. I'll just go ahead and say that. And the cool thing about them being the theme song on Rescue Me, one of the best placements that my band, The Swear, ever got was also on Rescue Me. And the way it happens, the way that you got picked to be on Rescue Me is we had a service, right, that we would go through to try to get placements. And the person that was doing it said, hey, for this show, the main actor, Dennis Leary, actually listens to everything. If it's okay with him, then you get on the show. So Dennis Leary actually picked all the music for his show.
Gave you the thumbs up for it.
He gave us a thumbs up, and the scene was awesome. It was... So they played our song Deadfall, and it's basically a parent going to a boy's room and trying to find his stash of marijuana. And our song is playing the whole time. And they're like looking all over the place, and they finally find it like taped underneath a desk or something. That's the scene, and it's playing our music. I will never forget that.
Do you have a clip of it?
I used to, but who knows what happened to it.
We'll find it somewhere.
Once we started recording stuff digitally, you just lose all that stuff.
Yeah, because it's not an actual hard copy
you can't
sitting
hold
in a
on
drawer.
to it. But anyway, so that's what I have in common with the Bondies. Now, they got their song played every week, but anyway, it's a great song. This is one of the greatest singles to come out of the decade, in my opinion. The Bondies never got the same love that the White Stripes got or that the Hives or any of those bands, and I actually feel like they were as good, if not better. So they did release a third album in 2009 before disbanding, but 3 albums and they were done. I thought they were a really, really good rock band. And listening to this at the time, everybody lumped them into a box. Oh, that's one of those garage bands. Mm-hmm. But now you go back and listen to it, now you're like, no, man, that's just good rock music. Yeah, rock was not dead in 2000s. There's so many bands. They just didn't get the same kind of exposure, and they were thrown into little groups and boxes. And listen to it now. Here's Come On, Come On. Got to be ready for that one, Robert.
God, everyone wants
this is
to
garage rock, man. 2 minutes and out.
I know. I'd like to step away from the mic for 3 seconds.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, of course I remember it now. And like I said, I vaguely remember the name until this actual song played. And I'm like, oh yeah. I never saw the TV show. I know he's a fireman in the show. And so that's the only connection I have to that TV show is I know he's a fireman and
you got that right.
I'm in a firehouse. So yeah, I mean, it was a little more rockin' and less garage bandy than the
a little more Stonesy.
Yeah,
kind of Stonesy
a little more Stonesy. Yeah, just like a heavy Stone sound to it. And I could see record companies looking for that particular category. Where do we put them? Because at the time, once again, the big bands were the really heavy rap metal, angry metal, new metal, whatever you want to call it, crap. sorry, I keep saying that word, stuff that, they had to find a place for them, and they were their own sound at the time.
Yeah, I mean, they were just rock
Just
and roll
fun.
to me. They had more in common with British invasion 60s style music than anything to me. That could have been a Kinks song, who knows. That was a top 25 hit in both the US and the UK, which I could totally see. I think I read it. They had more success in the UK than they did here.
What year was that roughly?
That was 2004.
Okay, I was thinking a little bit later, but yeah, I don't know what I was listening to at that. That was when we'd stopped
right after
being a
we had
band,
stopped. Yep.
and I don't remember what the hell I was for a while after that. I don't remember listening to anything specific after that. It wasn't until the late 2000s that I started getting reintroduced to indie rock and started really getting into music once again, where I think I was just kind of listening to lots of old stuff or what I was on the radio for a while. Just kind of, it was that nebulous time.
Next, I'm going to talk about a band that has a sister band. So this is the heavier version of one band, and then they have a sister band that's a lighter version. And the band that we're going to play is called Black Mountain, and they're Canadians from Vancouver, formed in 2004. The other band they have is called Pink Mountain Tops. So you got Black Mountain and Pink Mountain Tops. Black Mountain does the heavier stuff. Pink Mountain Tops does the lighter stuff.
Touring through the Blue Ridge Mountains onto the Purple Mountain Majesty.
They're from Canada, so I just thought that was interesting, and I've heard both bands. I like Black Mountain a lot better. They've released 5 albums. They're still around. Their last album came out last year, but they started in the 2000s and were one of the first, what I would consider, of the new indie rock.
And for those of you listening, he did air quotes.
I did air quotes.
I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
I did do air quotes. Indie rock. Nice.
Sorry.
So
I'm here to sidetrack you any chance I
you
get.
are. Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting because when they came out there, and when you hear them, I think you'll hear they sound very much like the last decade, more so than the 2000s. But their first tour, they actually opened for Coldplay. So think about that when you listen to the music, because that was interesting to me. Their second album was nominated for a Juno, which in Canada is like a Grammy. And they also had a song on the Spider-Man 3 soundtrack, which is a pretty big deal. So that's the album I'm going to play from. It's called In the Future, and all of their albums are great. I don't know, they're kind of indie but hard rocking and just a lot of fun. The other thing that I would say is probably their biggest accolade that they've ever had, for I would imagine for a Canadian, is last year they had a song featured on Hockey Night in Canada.
Wow.
I'm assuming for a Canadian, that's a big deal.
Big time.
Big time.
They dream of that.
I'm sure they do. So here is Black Mountain with Stormy High from In the Future 2008.
Just like barbed wire toys.
like this song? Well, I know one reason you like this song. Tell me if I'm lying. That intro, if it had the sound of little kids in the background.
I knew you were going there.
You know it. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, it is called Stormy High, so this is where the God of Thunder lives.
God of Thunder.
Yeah, that's totally why I love this band.
Not the best example of Kiss music,
but they wear their influences on their sleeves. For
nothing
sure.
wrong with that.
And they started off as a punk band, from what I understand, but this was not punk at all. This was
that's a little trippy. It was groove
a little bit
rock,
psyche,
a little psychedelic. I mean, the fuzz on the bass or both.
I think it was on everything.
Everything. It was really fuzzy.
Even the Hammond had fuzz.
Fuzzy. But yeah, that was kind of trippy. It was kind of just fun groove rock for
2008, they were a little ahead of the psych times.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of going on still now. But the last couple of years especially, that kind of stuff has been out. But to me, they were pretty innovative at the time. And I cannot see them opening for Coldplay.
No.
Not in 2000. Not in 2006, 2007.
No.
That's when Coldplay had their hits.
All the soccer moms going to the Coldplay concerts like, who's this band?
It's weird to me, but I would have loved it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I like some Coldplay songs, but seeing this open, I'm like,
like some soccer moms.
And I like the one I'm married to.
Oh, true, yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay, I have one more song for you. And I'm going to end with an English band because I think everyone else besides Black Mountain who were Canadian, I think they've all been American bands. Interesting. I don't know. I didn't do that on purpose. Oh, well. I did play the Atlanta band first on purpose, though.
Yes. First and foremost. They're the best.
The last band I'm going to play is a band called The Music. Do you remember that name?
No.
You should.
The
I'm going to tell
music.
you The Music.
The music.
The
not
music.
The music. Because they're English. It'd be the.
Is that an English thing?
There's a different time zone.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, on that side of the world, it's the.
All right. So English alternative rock band. They're from Leeds. They were formed in 1999, and they were written up in the NME, which in England, that's the New Musical Express. It's like the Rolling Stone, but it's a big English.
It's a pub.
It's a big English publication, and they were written up as the best unsigned band in 2001.
Kiss of death.
So what happens in 2002? Well, they get signed. That's what happens when you call somebody the best unsigned band.
Screw you, we're getting signed now. I'll show you.
So they get signed in 2002, and they put out a self-titled debut in 2002 as well, and it reached number 4 in the UK. They were big. Well, now you and I heard this band. I remember it well. I don't know if you do or not. We heard them in St. Louis, Missouri. We were on tour, and the club owner of the place where we played loved us and said, "Come back to my apartment. We're gonna party." And we went back and partied with this guy and several other people. You don't have any recollection of this?
No, I remember playing in St. Louis, and it was kind of a newer club. 'Cause we even played in some really old joints.
And it was in the burbs. It was
in the
outside.
burbs.
It was outside of St. Louis. It was a very cool venue.
And we went to his
show.
apartment?
We went to his apartment afterwards and had a few drinks and
well, that's
partied
probably
and
why.
had fun. That's probably why you don't remember.
What you're supposed to do.
But this guy was also, so he's a huge fan of ours, and he also was telling me about this new band called The Music. He's like, "You got to hear this. This is great." And he played the album. We must have listened to it 3 times in a row. He played this album. And so I became a fan, and I followed them for their whole career. And I'm going to play something from their second album. So they started off at number 4. Their second album came out. They only went to number 8. Oh, poor them. In the UK. Now, in the States, they never made a splash. But in the UK, they were huge. And they released one more album in 2008 before finally disbanding in 2011. But to me, their music was interesting because it was rock music, but it was like alt rock mixed with kind of dance grooves. And before you get turned off, it was done in a really cool way. And then the guy's voice, you just tell me who he sounds like. I'll save that for afterwards. But you tell me who the guy sounds like.
Challenge accepted.
It makes it harder than it needs to be. What you didn't know is that I was gonna stay this way. Yeah. I thought that there was something going wrong with me. I thought that everyone in this life should be free. But now I realize that something here is wrong. I want you to come on up and sing the people. Come on up and sing this song. Dance for the freedom, fathers of the world. Did the walls to really love. They don't want you to love you on your way. And I won't let you be there. It's okay.
Yeah, I recognize it. Mr. Vince Neil.
Oh, see, I was going to say Getty.
Well, because we made the reference last time, and it could have gone either way. I said Geddy Lee, and you said Vince Neil last
Right.
week, so I was trying to go the opposite.
I felt
was
like
too clever for
the
myself.
inflection in just the way that he said certain words and did his yes, it sounded like Geddy Lee to
Yeah.
me. In the first album, he sounds even more like Geddy. This is off the second album called North, or I'm sorry, Welcome to the North.
I'm just jealous that he can hit those notes. I never could have hit that.
Pretty
so.
amazing.
Yeah, great. And I love the fact that guitar had a little bit of a phaser on it. That's one of my
It was
favorite
like
effects.
dancey. It was like
Yeah,
Brit pop mixed with rock.
Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of
It was,
interesting.
it was
and
danceable.
I don't think there was any other band that I can think of that had exactly that sound.
No, that was
so they were unique.
That
to
was
me.
a good combination.
So that's what I have for you. I hope that I have proven that there was rock music in the 2000s. You probably just missed some of it, or you just weren't paying attention, or you were just listening to whatever station you were listening to and listening to the same old stuff.
Or we're just too hammered to remember certain things back then.
Well, I'm speaking specifically to those people that said, there's no good music now.
Well, I am one of those. I, just like everybody else, bitch and gripe about there not being music out there. So I appreciate being reminded that there was. You had to look for it and be on the lookout for it. But yeah, there was good music back then.
I will say one of the things that I realized as I was doing the research on, the number of albums and everything that each of these bands released is this was really where the legacy acts stop. Because if you think about all the decades prior to this, all the rock bands, there's still bands from the 90s putting out music today, the Pearl Jams of the world and whatnot. And other than... really, Coldplay barely. They're the only one that, and they even squeaked in at the end of the 90s, I believe. So this is when most of these bands aren't together anymore.
No.
Because the business changed such that there's not, if you're not making it and making a killing at it, you can't sustain yourself. And so ever since the 2000s, this has been the way the music industry has gone.
One album and you're done.
Unless you can totally sustain yourself on touring like a Blackberry Smoke or some of these other bands that are out there that we know of. But for the most part, if you're a rock band, you get maybe 3 albums, maybe. And of those 3, maybe one of them is on a label and maybe one of them's independent release and maybe one of them's on some very small label.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. So this is really when that all started. And I think a lot of that has to do with the internet and the fact that first it kind of moved to singles. People were just buying 99-cent songs and not buying the albums anymore. And they just lost that physical copy. It wasn't a unique thing anymore. It was just disposable. And now it's moving into streaming. And so now it's really disposable. You can get anything you want just by, oh yeah, I remember this band. I'm going to search for it and I'll play a song and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. And you're not paying for any of it. Unfortunate.
Yes.
But this is really where that started, and that's why most of the bands that I've played today are not around any longer. With that sour note, we'll talk to you next time.
I'm going to go see if the ants are still in the van.
All right. Later.